All right, so this class is part of a very long-running series, and this is the introduction. What I'd like to do, God willing, at this time, is spend some time going through what we call the Jewish process of spiritual development. We talk about being Jewish in terms of our beliefs. We talk about it in terms of our the things that we practice, our mitzvot, the commandments. We talk about it in terms of the things that we do on the weekends, like Shabbat and the holidays, and so on and so forth. And it's so easy for Judaism to become this external system, the things that you're doing, eating kosher, going to a synagogue, and those are all beautiful, important things, but not if they are void of a process of inner growth and development. And ultimately, what Judaism really wants is for you to become a greater human being. Now, I do think that by just virtue of doing the mitzvot alone, you'll become a better person. But I think because we live in a generation where we are so distracted, we're so busy, we're pulled in so many different directions, it's very difficult to kind of create a space where we could absorb the experience of making a bracha, of doing birkat hamazon, of benching and praying and giving charity properly and seeing how those things are supposed to transform us. So there has been a lot of conversation over the years. As the rabbis remember, there's been a lot that has been lost throughout the ages. And different people throughout our history have spent time bringing back, unearthing these deep Jewish principles, which were always the bedrock of Jewish society. And we've lost it over time. The fact that the Chavetz Chaim had to write a book on Shmirat HaLashon only about 100 years ago, the last 2,000 years, the Gemara says very clearly, the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed because of Sinat Chinam, but that Sinat Chinam is an expression of Lashon Hara. So why did it take 2,000 years for a man in Poland to come up with a book on Shmirat HaLashon? It should be an ancient book. And the answer is that this information was always there for the student, for the intellectual. They found it, they understood how to implement it, and then these rabbis throughout history have created the research, the time to organize it and provide this information to the layman. And a lot of what we're going to do over here at this time for the next, 12 to 15 weeks is going to be discussing what we call our Midot, right? The word midah means measure, but it also means character. And it's important to make this distinction between what we measure externally, what we measure internally. It's the same word. And this idea that we're going to be using a lot, we say that midot don't split. That when you have a particular trait on the inside, you're going to find it on the outside. When you are struggling with a haughtiness in one area of your life, you'll find you're struggling with it in another area of your life. If you are struggling with arrogance, it's going to pop out. If you're overly humble in one area of your life, it's going to come out in other areas of your life. Things don't split. And therefore, the measure of a man is his character. As Jews, we have to ask the question, well, what are we doing to refine that character? As children, when we were kids, we remember you have to have good midot, you have to have good midot, it's so important that you're kind, that you're giving. But there's a lot more to a midah than the kindness that we share with the people around us to, hold on a second, I just want to mute everybody, to ensure that we're developing and growing. And it stops at some point. And the question is, why does it stop? If the month of Shvat, which just ended a couple of days ago, because today is Rosh Chodesh Adar, right? If the month of Shvat, we celebrate Tu B'Shvat, which we spoke about, which is a month of inner growth and development. It's the month where the trees, which on the outside look like they're dead, they're barren, there's no leaves, there's no fruits on them, right? They look so lost. There's no hope. But what Tu B'Shvat tells us that in this darkness of winter, when the trees look externally like they're dead, internally there is something that's happening. The roots of the trees are drawing sap from the earth, and they're slowly going through this metamorphosis of change that in about 6 weeks' time, You and I are going to look outside and no longer see the snow covering our dirty streets, but instead you'll see dirty streets, but with trees that have these little buds that are beginning to bloom. And the seasons are changing, and therefore we have the power to change as well. And Chachamim tell us that just like man is like the tree of the field. If the trees are going through change, then we're going through change. And everything in the physical world that is happening is an expression of what's happening in a spiritual plane above. And if in the lower world that we're in right now is going through change and growth, that means on a spiritual level, you and I can tap into this power of growth and development as well. Now, the month of Adar, we say, Mishenichnas Adar, Marbe Be Simcha. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean I should drink more wine during the week? Does that mean I should go to comedy shows? How do I add more simcha into my life? What is this simcha that we talk about all the time? Is it eating more steak? Whatever your poison is, whatever it is that makes you happier, how do we add more of that to our lives? So now, growing up in the West, we've often buy into words, concepts, ideas that are somewhat bankrupt and counterfeit, right? So when we talk about happiness in America, we talk about the things that make us happy, right? And this is a mistake. That's not what real simcha is. Happiness at its core is something much more profound than going out and having a good time. And again, and don't misunderstand me. I'm a very big believer in having a good time. You're going to party hard, right? If you're going to go out and have fun, right? But don't mix fun with happiness. Happiness is something different, right? You can be very happy in a place of tremendous sadness. What do I mean? So happiness or simcha is knowing that you're doing what you are meant to be doing. That's real simcha. Simcha is when your soul is aligned with its mission and you're doing everything you can to accomplish what the soul needs for it to grow. That is real simcha. Simcha is not going to the gym. Right? Simcha is not even looking at the mirror and looking at your beautiful six-pack. Simcha is knowing that you are exactly where you're meant to be doing, that you're growing in the right way, you're developing yourself. How do we know what we are meant to be working on? So many people today are unhappy because they don't spend enough time clarifying what it means to be them. Who are you? Where are you going? What does it mean to be you? What are you doing to develop yourselves? Now, if you spend some time, and this is a very easy, practical tool. This is the most simplest way I could tell you how to do it. What I'm going to ask you to do, and we're going to be referring back to this a lot in this conversation, is I'm going to ask you all to spend some time. It could be either now if you want to doodle on the side of your notes or whatever it is. Write out 5 things that you think come supernatural to you. What are the things that are very easy to you? What are the things that are super, your superpowers, the things that you excel at very easily? And then, alongside it, I want you to write 5 things that you're struggling with. The 5 things you find that always come difficult, that are most challenging for you. Okay, they could be anything. Now, if you spend some time looking at this list, these 5 fives, right? You'll find that this list is going to comprise the essence of your unique mission. Okay, things that you're really good at, you can be better at, and things that you're struggling at, we have to overcome and not become a struggle. Now, I want to be clear. There's no scenario where any human being on planet Earth lives without struggle. Everyone struggles. Everyone has hardship. Everyone has things that they're carrying that's very heavy. No one on earth has it easy. Some people, it looks easier on the outside. It looks a little easier, from the things that you and I see. But at the core of a human being, everyone's carrying something. It doesn't matter if it's fair, not fair. For each person, it's different. And therefore, stop thinking about what you see on the outside of yourselves as being struggle and happiness. And instead, the scale should be the midah that we're measuring is your inner character, your inner strength, your inner person. Forget about the world outside for a minute. I'm not saying that we don't use the outside world as a litmus test. We could, but I think that's just going to bring you a tremendous amount of unhappiness because it's not fair. Some kids are born with a tremendous amount of chokhmah. They're just very smart. I see kids who are born with amazing memories. They don't have to put in any effort. They spend a couple of minutes looking at a sheet. They know it by heart. They don't have to study. They could play the rest of the day. But not everyone has that. That kid is going to have a different kind of struggle than another kid who has to work really hard to remember. But don't get me wrong, both kids have struggles. Would I like to have the struggle of not having to study too much? Yeah, because they're easy results. But that kid's gonna have different kind of problems. Everyone's gonna have issues. Everyone's gonna have something they have to overcome. So let's just be clear about it. When we talk about spiritual growth and development, what we're saying is that at the core, God creates a universe of perfection. But Rabbi, how can you call it perfection? How can we call this perfection when we see so much imperfection? And like my professor of philosophy once told me in class, well, if you see a world of imperfection and you believe God created it, wouldn't that suggest that God is far from perfect? And I raised my hand innocently and I said, can't you also believe that God created the most imperfect, perfect world for us? And that the imperfection is there for us to refine? Because God wants to have free will. And if everything was perfect, then what are we doing here? What's the purpose of life? The purpose of life, the Vilna Gaon says, the purpose of life is to develop yourself. Otherwise, what's the purpose? Think about it for a minute. Why are we here? Is it just to eat, to sleep, to make children, to do the same thing? Why are we here? Why are we doing what we do? So we believe that the reason why we're here is to choose who we want to be. Do you want to become a kangaroo and learn how to jump really high? Do you want to be a boxer? Do you want to develop the physique of a gorilla? Okay, that's your prerogative. Or do you want to be someone who is mindful? Do you want to be someone who is loving and caring, understanding, passionate, deep, learned? How are we refining ourselves? Every single person was born at a different time of the year, at a different place, the different circumstances, and therefore our mazalot are all different. But the one thing every human being on earth shares is that we are all born with something we need to refine and overcome. And in that process of that refinement, in that process of overcoming, and I'm not saying you're going to achieve it. I'm not saying you're ever going to be a perfect human being, because there's no one that was ever perfect. Moshe Rabbeinu, the greatest prophet that ever lived, struggled with so many things. He struggled. He had kas. He was angry, right? He was frustrated, and he was punished for it. How does a man of that stature and greatness succumb to his emotions? He's human. But that doesn't take away his gadlut, his greatness. That doesn't take away the most amazing things that he had accomplished. We respect all the things that he had accomplished, but we remember that he's human. And therefore, Harambam tells us that we can be like Moshe. You have the power of being as great as Moses. And the pushback I should be getting from all of you is, well, Rabbi, how is that possible if we say that there's never going to be a Navi as great as Moshe ever again? And of course there won't be a Navi as great as Moshe. No one could be as great as Moshe. But we also say that Moshe and Aharon, his brother, were equals. How is that possible? And the answer is that each person is measured based on their ability to achieve their own tafkid, their own greatness, their own purpose. So what does it mean for you to be like Moses or as great as Moses? All you got to do is be the best version of yourself. Being the best version of yourself is what allows you to become as great as Moses. Are you going to be a prophet that's going to come down and split oceans and perform miracles? I don't know. But the one thing that I do know is that if you're in a place where you're working hard at becoming great, even if you don't achieve what you think is greatness, you are for sure great in God's eyes. Hello, Marie.
Hi, how are you?
Fantastic. How are you?
Good, thank you.
What's going on? All right, I'm in the middle. Let's just. Do you have a question, or you just wanted to say hi?
Oh, sorry, no, I want to say hi.
Okay. Hello. All right. So what I want to do is I want to spend some time talking about a little bit about what are these midot, what are these traits, what are the traits that help us become greater, deeper, bigger human beings, and what are some of the processes that are the tools that one can use to, really look within themselves and develop them to a greater human being. So what we're going to be doing is we talk about different midot. So I gave you a sheet, which I'm happy to send all of you as soon as I'm done with the class. Just type in your email and the messages over there, and I'm happy to send it to you. We have 13 midot that we're going to be discussing over the next 15 weeks, 16 weeks, depending on how these classes go. We're talking about anivut, anava, right? Humility. We're talking about hakar zatov, gratitude. We're going to be speaking about savlanut, patience. We're going to be speaking about kavod, honor. We're going to be speaking about generosity, chesed, gevurah, strength, menuchat hanefesh, tranquility, bitachon, trust, zrizut, enthusiasm, order, seder, zihirut, awareness, and last, emet, truth. And we're not going to talk about these as just words that we use, but we're going to talk about these as traits that we can bring into our world so we can become bigger, greater human beings. Now, a lot of this process of conversation falls under the rubric, the category of musar. And it's a definitely, people when they hear the word musar, they don't like it. It scares them a little bit. That means the rabbi is going to be talking about fire and brimstone, and excuse me, he's going to be saying things that I don't want to hear. And I have found the opposite, that this conversation of musar is a very, very different. It's very empowering. Because the class is not about focusing on the things that you're not doing. The conversation is not going to be about the places that you're failing in. The conversation is going to be about that these are different principles that you can use in your life to become a deeper, bigger, greater human being. That's what I want for everybody here. I want you to walk away feeling like there's so much more to the world that you're living in. There's so much more depth to the world that you're at. And these are some of the tools that can allow you to kind of like engage with these traits and with yourselves as becoming a bigger human being. So there was something called the Musar movement, which took place in the 19th century, mostly in Lithuania by someone by the name of Rabbi Yisrael Lipkin of Salant, also known as Rabbi Yisrael Salanter. Okay, he wrote a book called Or LeYisrael, where a lot of these ideas are from. Now, Jews throughout the world have taken these ideas. This is the same principle. What do you mean? There was no one doing character development until Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, and the answer is no. People were always doing it. They didn't need a system to do it. It was baked into their reality. They were doing it, through osmosis. It was in their home, in their culture. It was in their land. But as we've created societies that are so far removed from the world that we came from, right? We needed processes. One of the rides, I was just in Disney, I was telling some of you before, there's an old ride, maybe you remember it, it's called the Wheel of Progress. Okay, this is one of the oldest running shows in the world. It's been around for 60 years. And it's a room, you sit down like a movie theater, and there's a stage up there, and there's like a bunch of puppets, like automatrons. They all look human, they're not like animals. And there's a man who starts telling the story about how amazing the world that he lives in. It's about 1880, and how he just has a stove in his house, and how amazing it is that he could burn wood in his home, and how he could pump and get water into his house, and so on and so forth. And basically, as each one of these robots tell the story of progress, the room switches, right? Meaning like the seats that you're in rotate, and you're at a new stage. And this is 4 or 5 times. Okay, and these are the same robots from 60 years ago telling the same story. And it's about progress, about how the world has evolved. And it's a constant measure of what I call chitzoni progress, external progress. The man is exactly the same. His face hasn't changed. His clothing changes in each time that they rotate the room. Okay, the appliances around him change. a new refrigerator, a new gas, I got a coal oven, I got a gas oven, I got an electric oven, I got a microwave, and we're just measuring progress using external things. And to me, this is the most superficial way of measuring progress. And this superficiality is new to us as human beings. 150 years ago, our great-grandparents lived in a world that was exactly the same as their parents and the parents before them for the last 5,000 years. Nothing's really, small adjustments, okay, have been made, okay? But at the core, pretty much 90% of everything is exactly the same. The world that you and I are living in right now is radically different. Do you think our great-grandparents could have imagined the world that you and I live in today? That I pick up a square little plastic thing with a piece of glass on it and I push a button and a taxi guy comes up and takes me to my destination? That I need food? I go to the same app and I go to Uber Eats and I go to Holy Schnitzel and I have like a nice schnitzel sandwich over here ready for me, nice and hot, within minutes? It's insane. That I could get take the same device and then talk to someone and see them across the globe. It's mind-boggling. This is like, it's magic. How are you doing this? No, this is called technology. And it's very easy to use technological advancement as a metric for growth. By the way, we do this with money also. Oh, successful people have more money. Not true. That's not success.
There's some correlation. I mean, it took the intelligent man to get to that point.
Oh, I'm not saying it doesn't, but remember, this is the problem. I'm not talking about intelligence.
It's not success.
I agree, right? But this is my point. It's true that there's progress, but progress at the expense of inner progress, outer progress versus inner progress. Do you want to understand why we're living in a world today where we're suffering with these ridiculous notions of what we're supposed to be doing in society today? That we have created a generation of snowflakes, that we can't have meaningful conversations that stand in opposition to your views. Where does that come from? This, my friends, comes from a society that has only measured chitzoni success as progress. Where's the pnimiut of a person today? Where's that inner character of a person today that has the fortitude, the strength to have a conversation, to be able to go back and forth and have real dialogue? How did we lose that? So we lost it because we're only measuring chitzoni, external progress. So I was watching this thing, and I'm like, oh, I wish I could take the set and bring it here with me and then add one more slide on that stage and come out and say, this is amazing that we've just measured outer progress. But in the 150 years of all this technological advancement that we've created, we know so much about relationships. We know so much about psychology and people. Are we better parents today? Are we better people today? Have we refined ourselves to become more loving and giving? We're wealthier and more powerful than any nation in the world. How many of us? Yeah, I can take a water or a tea. Thank you so much.
It's worse.
It's worse.
Much worse.
Again, and the reason why it's getting worse is because the mark of man is not what he creates external from him. Those technologies are important, and I'm not saying we shouldn't have them. I can't wait for flying cars. I can't wait for drones picking me up and taking me from Long Island to the city. It would cut my travel time. It gives me more time to learn, give me more time to teach classes. I would love that.
Same drone with Barack Obama on it.
You're right. It's going to remember. There's always going to be a cost to every technology that we create, but it can't come at the expense. Thank you so much of who we are, pnimi, inside. That is the purpose of this conversation. What we're going to do over the next weeks and months together is talk a little bit about what we can do to improve who we are at the core of our being, the inner essence of what makes us us, what makes you uniquely you. That's the conversation that I want to have with you. Why? Because while we can enjoy all these things that the new modern man has, heat, electricity, internet, and so on and so forth, God willing, one day maybe space travel. I was reading that Disney is actually looking to purchase a small section of the moon because they want to do Space Mountain in space, and maybe in 10 years from now we're going to go to new destinations. Who knows? I would love to give the first shiur in space, the next 10 years, my friends, forget the next 10 years, in the next 12 months, the world that you know is going to change drastically. Okay, there's something called, you could Google this afterwards, there's something called the James Webb telescope. The James Webb telescope is the most powerful telescope ever created by man. They just launched it into space on Christmas from France. Okay, it's different than the Hubble telescope. The Hubble telescope, which was amazing, gave us the power of looking into far, far solar systems and different, areas of space. But the lens is it's old. It's like 30 years old. So the James Webb telescope uses infrared, and basically, it's going to have the power of looking back to the Big Bang. Not only that, we have never been able to see the formation of a solar system. We know that there's a solar system emerging, but because of the dust clouds, we can't see how is the sun growing? Where does the sun come from? Do you know that there's something called a white hole and not just a black hole? That black holes are the things that suck in all matter, and it's so powerful that even light can't escape it. There's something called a white hole, which is the opposite of a black hole, which is shooting out matter into the universe. Right? But this is how fast science is changing, right? And in the next few months, you and I are going to be seeing pictures and images of things that we couldn't begin to imagine. Okay, the James Webb telescope, just to understand how precise it is, not only will it be able to find planets, but it could find a fly on your shoulder and see it. That's what kind of precision and clarity it has. Okay? That's where we're at right now. Okay, this is the beginning of it. We're talking about change and development in space. We're talking about change and development in mRNA technology and DNA technology. I mean, there's so much that's happening out there. The world's going to change. But remember, again, I'm all for the change. I can't wait for us to live in a world where we can say, okay, you know what? Cancer doesn't exist anymore. It's gone. We know how to go ahead and use the CRISPR technology to edit the genes so that cancer is gone. No more heart disease anymore. We figured out how to get the genes to work in a way where we get rid of these things. Can you imagine what that world looks like? But I could see that world becoming even more superficial. I could see that world with so much power. Like, we are the most powerful generation in the world. Think of it like this. Historically, in the ancient times, people always spoke about the apocalypse. The end is nigh, the end is near, right? Remember that? The guy ringing the bell? Okay? We never, ever had the power as human beings to bring the end. It was always going to be a cataclysmic event that the gods were going to punish you, or God was going to punish you. But this is the first time in history of the last 60 years, 70 years now, right? That we could actually have the power of destroying this planet ourselves. We could choose. Yeah. Oh, there are people today that it's scary. It's 100% very scary. Russia, China today have enough missiles to blow up the earth 1,000 times. So does the United States. But I'm just saying, it's this terrifying world that you and I are living in. We have so much of this outer strength. And again, I want to figure out what we should be doing to building inner strength. You see, the world that we grew up in was relatively peaceful, considering what history looked like over the last 2,000 years. The last 60 years have been relatively peaceful, considering how barbaric the world was. Yeah. Just so you understand, Genghis Khan, okay? Genghis Khan, over 7 years, killed 50 million people. That's how many people died in the Holocaust with a nuclear bomb, with swords. We're not talking about machine guns. The guy chopped off 50 million people's heads, him and his army. Okay, millions of people. It was a very barbaric world that we lived in. Do you know that 1 out of every 10 Asian is a descendant of Genghis Khan? Because that's how many women he raped. Do you understand the world the world that was? But we were able to enjoy relative calm and peace over the last 60, 70 years because of the strength of the generation before us. They were young cadets, 18, 19 years old, went to fight in World War II, and they defeated a fascist, tyrant, Hitler, and the Nazis. And because of the strength of the United States and Europe at the time, those that were really willing to fight, England, willing to fight the Nazis, we were able to have this world of strength because of peace, because of the strength of those people. Now, what are we going to leave to the next generation? Fancy cars, fast internet, You're on a plane. Oh, the internet's not fast enough here. You're sitting in a chair, flying in the sky, and you're complaining about your internet, and someone's offering you a drink, to you like ice with that in the sky, and you're complaining, right? But you see, it's all about your inner world, and therefore the rabbis throughout time have spoken about this concept of the conscious being, your inner voice. 75 years before Sigmund Freud was around, we're talking about the things that make you who you are. What's your psychology? What is your mental framework? What can we do to achieve something bigger, something more? How do we work on our discipline to become better, greater human beings? So there's a lot of different schools and different systems that are in place. I'm not going to go through all of them. If anyone wants to read about them, I'm happy to recommend books. But what I want to do a little bit is talk to you about what it means to be a human being. Okay? What does it mean to be a human being? And we have this pasuk in the Vayikra, we're going to see in a few months. We say, Kedoshim tihiyu. Right? The Torah says, you shall be holy. Right? What does it mean to be holy? Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol nehiyah b'dvaro.
Amen.
Oh, I needed that. Thank you. God bless you. Okay. Now, so what does it mean to be holy? So that question, what it means to be holy, is something that Musar is trying to answer. What is the path? What are the obstacles? What are the things that I need to do to become holy? Now, I know what you're thinking. The word holy, Rabbi, is scary. I think of holy, I think of big rabbis, or I think of spiritual gurus, I think of priests or monks, whatever it is. Erase that notion from your mind. That's not what Kedusha is. What you're really doing, when I say the word holy, is you're thinking of asceticism. Right, which means a world without gashmiut. Right, the monk forgoes all his physical things and he lives in the Tibetan mountains and he sits there and he goes for 10 years, a vow of silence. No interaction with the opposite of the wheel of progress. Right, the opposite. That's not the Jewish way. The priest, no men, no women. Right, the nun, no men, no right. Everything I have, I donate to the church. That's not the Jewish way. The Jewish way is by using everything that the world has to offer. As a matter of fact, the Gemara says that when we die, God's going to ask us, did you go and see the Alps, the Swiss Alps? Did you see the views I created for you? Did you enjoy nature? Did you spend some time looking at the colors in the sky, the stars, the shooting stars? Did you spend some time understanding the world that I created for you? That every month the sky changes, the stars change for a new constellation? It's beautiful. Do we spend some time appreciating that stuff? Are we internalizing these things? So, what does the word holy mean? Right? What is this concept of kadosh? Right? And what does it mean to command it? Kedoshim tihiyu. Right? If the Torah is instructing us to be holy, then we should have some kind of path, a way of achieving holy. Now, what's interesting is that the word kedoshim tiyu is written in the plural. It doesn't say kadosh tiyeh, right? Therefore, this is for all of us. This concept of being a mamlechet kohanim, of being a nation of priests, is unique to Judaism. There is no other religion that speaks about a people of becoming priestly, of a nation becoming holy, not an individual. That's especially those guys. The rabbi is going to be the guy that makes all the brachot, and I'm just going to go work. That's not the way it works. In the olden days, the rabbi had a job also, not in the synagogue. He had a parnasah outside of the synagogue. Right, and he was also the rabbi of the synagogue, right? He had, and the congregants weren't just members who went out to work and sat there like sheep doing whatever the rabbi said. No, they were learned individuals who had a dialogue, a back and forth, and were learning with the rabbi. There was conversation there. this is the world that I want to bring us back to. Okay, so what's unique about Judaism is that every one of us has the power within us to live a life of Kedusha. And if you've spent time thinking about certainly your grandparents, and if not your great-grandparents, if you had the sweet of meeting them, they were holy people. I know they were holy because you're here. Because if they weren't holy, they weren't who they are, you and I would not be here having this conversation. We come from people from a couple of generations ago who spent time fasting before Shabbat. I promise you that all of your great-grandmothers were crying when they were lighting candles on Friday, and they were praying for you and for me. That's where we come from. We came from people who were strong, deep, beautifully spiritual, strong inner people, not just chitzoni people. They may have not had all of the luxury and technology that you and I have right now, but certainly that pnimiyut, their inner power, is unbelievable. And we're here because of their strength. They understood what Kedusha meant. They understood what it means to be a mamlechet kohanim, to be priestly. They were still engaged in the world. They did their things, they were able to enjoy, they had fun also, but not at the expense of losing what it meant to be them and their inner worlds. I have a suspicion that another reason why we've lost this is because the world has changed, meaning 100 years ago, when you were home, your house was a safe haven, right? The outside world never came into your house. No, you didn't know what was going on. There was no newspapers in your house. There was no magazines in your house. Your house was a temple, right? It was a different reality. And that world has changed today. Today, we have this device over here, right? And it follows me wherever I go. And the whole outside world is in my pocket, in my house, in my bedroom. It's everywhere. It's all of us. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. No, okay, so I'm not saying these things because I don't want you to think that these things are bad. These things are challenging. Everything in the world has the power of doing something that is positive or negative. Every technology can be used in a powerful, profound way. We use nuclear energy that's powering the whole entire planet. It's amazing. We need energy. We need electricity, right? It could be used as a bomb, though. You could choose how you want to use that technology to save lives or to destroy lives. It's a double-edged sword. It has the power to do good, and God forbid the power to do bad. How we use it is generally an expression of who we are, the inner character, the inner being, right? And therefore, the more, again, we spend time understanding what this means to be a kadosh, right? I think the more we'll be able to grow in our inner world. So now, what's interesting is that like this, when God makes a commandment, he says, do X, is that a law, or is that what we call eitzah? Is that advice? Is God giving us advice to be kadosh? Or is he saying, no, you have to be kadosh? I'll give you an example. There is someone by the name of, Rabbi Yosef Yozel Horowitz, right? He wrote a book called Madrigot Adam. And he says that when God told Adam not to eat an Eitz Hadat Tov Hara, he was giving him an Eitzah. He was giving him advice.
How do we know it's it?
What's that? He's saying it's good advice, don't eat it, because he ate from it. Yeah, he said, Lo tachlu, don't eat it. Listen, it's like you're going on a diet, right? When God says something, right, over here, this is very interesting. It's unique to Adam. Why is it unique to Adam? Because God didn't destroy him and wipe him out. Adam's choice created a new reality for the world, a world with death. You have a choice to make, right? The Torah says, right, I put before you today life and death. Choose life. Because ultimately it's going to be your choice.
Yeah, but how do I know it's not a law?
This is his approach. I'm just saying, there's an approach that says that this is God giving you advice. This is not an injunction, right? This is Eitzah. When God says to be kadosh, it's not like a law where God says don't murder, right? It's a little different. Okay? Over here, he's just saying, be holy. What does that mean? He's learning it over here. You could go ahead and say it's advice. I hear it. Okay? Now, what does it mean to become holy? Now,
say something.
Hello?
hi.
What are forks made out of?
What are forks made out of? Well, it depends if you're using a metal fork or a wooden fork. Anyway, but that's not the question right now you should be asking. The question you should be asking right now is, what do you need to do to become a greater human being? Anyway, all right, yes. So, that was very random. I appreciate that question, though. Okay, so now, let's say it like this. You are. Let me ask you this. Do you feel like you have a drive to want to become a greater human being? Do you feel, when you wake up in the morning, this passion to want to be great? Or do you just feel tired and like groggy? Until you get your coffee. When I get my coffee, that's when I feel the drive. Until then, I don't feel anything.
In the world we live in.
Very true, right? How many hours a day do you spend cleaning, upgrading, improving, reconfiguring, maintaining, all kinds of different aspects of our lives, the world that you and I live in? We commit so much time and effort into making things better because you don't realize it. You were born with an innate desire to be great.
Yes.
Think of it.
But
you're using it for chitzoni things, external things. My room, it's got to be orderly. My table, it's got to be set. I got to look nice. I got to be dressed properly. But these are all external things, right? And again, beautiful. Do it. It's better to have a clean house than to have a dirty house. You know what I'm saying? It's better for you to be dressed properly than for you to be dressed improperly. But because we live in such materialistic times, we express this desire of improvement in materialistic kinds of ways, right? So we're talking about, people today changing the color of their hair, changing their car, straightening, whitening their teeth, doing the laundry, upgrading the computer, buying new phones, getting the newest gizmos. We're always upgrading, better, bigger, better, right? Greater all the time. Now, the reason why the Torah tells us, right, to be holy is because it understands that we have this drive. You're born with a natural, innate desire to be kadosh. How we express it, that depends on you. That depends on me. And this is exactly why, in a world where you want to know why so many people are looking for spirituality? You know why so many people feel so empty when we have so much luxury and so much available to us? It's because we're missing the mark. We're missing the mark. And therefore, the recalibration, so to speak, after this talk, hopefully, for all of us, is that we are able to understand that holiness is about being separate. It's about being a little different than the rest of the world, right? The kedusha, the word kadosh, right, is very much a part and parcel of our ability of creating boundaries. The word kadosh means to have boundaries. It's interesting, with children, we're very quick to tell them what they can't do. Don't do this, don't do that. Don't go there, don't go here, right? Be this, don't be that, right? Who tells adults what to do? Right? Who tells you what to do? What's that? Other adults. But at some point, you become the adult in the room. Who tells that person what to become, what to be, what to do? So at some point, there's no higher authority. It just becomes you. Ultimately, it's going to be you. And even you to decide whether or not you want to listen to the adults, that's up to you. You're an adult now. You can do whatever you want to do. And this is the challenge of being an adult. That the Torah itself, as a system of development and growth, wants each of us to have something else to answer to make sure that we don't lose ourselves in the process. The Torah isn't just a book of laws. The Torah is a book of spiritual greatness. It's demanding and asking you, what are you doing to be more kadosh today? We talk about it different ways. How you eat, the foods that you put into your body, it impacts your soul. How you spend your weekends. Shabbat is a time of us separating from the 6 days of work, the hustle and bustle of the outside world, and create a mikdash ma'at, a small little, sanctuary of our home where we are no longer allowing the frequencies of the outside world to penetrate the walls of our home. Where are the boundaries that we create in our lives? Was it okay to use that word so negative about your spouse's friend or your colleague at work? Is that the right way to speak? Was it okay for you to lose your temper? Were you being too impatient? Were you lacking gratitude? Who's asking those questions to adults today? I'm okay, I'm done, I'm an adult, I'm finished, I'm matured. Spoiler alert, no, you did not. It's a lifelong process that every day is a unique opportunity of refinement, of greatness, of refinement, of becoming something bigger and better. Okay? So holiness is like a type of spiritual blossoming, right? Growing in a very deep and beautiful way, right? There's no easy way to express it in a way that's meaningful. But I would say like this, that the word holiness also comes from the word holiness expresses itself in something called wholesomeness, right? It's spelled differently, yes, right? Well, what does it mean to be attaining wholesomeness? Okay, we don't always speak in, the goal isn't necessarily to become holy, but the goal is to become a mensch. How do you become a mensch? Shleimut, right? We talk about things of wholesomeness, of shleimut comes from the word shalom, of peace, of having tranquility in your world, of being equal, allowing yourself to be a balanced human being. That is the kind of world that you and I want to be living in. We are not whole now, W-H-O-L-E, right? But we can become whole and complete if we spent some time understanding where the unbalanced aspect of our lives comes from. Capiche? Yeah, it's very deep. Sorry, I know it's only 12. It's only 1 o'clock.
It's talking about as an individual in the world itself.
Correct.
Oh, I'm saying, which one are we?
What do you mean?
Leading to?
Are you? Say it again. What's your question?
Okay, what was the last thing you said? Sorry.
The last thing I said was that in order we want to become whole, right? And the way we become whole is through shalom, through peace. They're having tranquility of our lives, being balanced, and therefore allowing our midot to become balanced.
Therefore, we have to find the imbalance.
Well, we have to be aware of the imbalance.
Be aware.
You have to
of
find
the
it.
imbalance.
It's there already.
Right, it's there.
Yeah.
How do you know?
So that sheet that you wrote, those 5 things, is the beginning of that process.
So you're saying as an individual, not within the world that
Correct.
we live
As
in.
an individual. Yeah.
The world we live in also has to do with your individual.
100%. And this is why, by the way, you'll see that in that sheet where we have the 13 midot, the 13 soul traits, is going to become a conversation. What we're going to do is, it's actually colorful. It's actually prettier if you have the color version. When we go through these midot, what you're going to find is that each one is going to start informing you about yourself. I do this. This is me. This is the worst part of who I am. You know what I'm saying? Just so you understand, when we talk about working on a midah, we're going to do this like very fast. We're going to do an hour a week for whatever it is. When it came to savlanut, patience, I spent 18 months working on patience. Daily readings, reviews, meditations, journals, logging, 18 months. And the only thing I can tell you is that I'm the most impatient person in the world. I got a little bit more patient. But I understand that the word savlanut comes from the word sovel, which means to carry a burden, right? And it means that, and therefore I've kind of changed the way I use that word, and therefore my whole understanding of what patience is has changed. And I've grown from it. But again, this is a lifelong journey of becoming a holy, wholesome person. Okay, so I think I want to end over here on that note. And God willing, next week we're going to talk a little bit about the system for development. We can talk for hours, I think, about the core principle of the need to work on ourselves. I think we did that very well here. I think you got the picture of the idea. Now, what you do with it is up to you. So this is your homework, okay? There's a little bit of homework at the end of each sheet that's going to happen in each class over the next several weeks and months. Okay, the homework for this week is to take out your list that you made, 5 and 5, read it over again, okay? Review the list for 2 minutes, it says 5 minutes every day, just look at it. We're gonna get into the habit of something called journaling together. Very, very powerful tool for measuring and plotting out the points necessary for you to achieve your greatness. And God willing, next week we'll start the actual, we'll do one more introduction, and then hopefully we'll start the Midot as well. But if you have any questions, I'll take them, and if not,
Is this class number 2?
no, it's class number 1, yeah.
What is it made out of?
I'm gonna go into moments.
Yeah, it's made out of metal.
Would you repeat the 5
Metal.
and 5?
Metal.
Yeah, the 5 and 5 are like this. The 5 are the 5 things that come natural to you. The 5 that are easily attainable by you. What we'd call your superpower.